Hey, this is Tyler. Welcome to lesson 4 of EQ Performer. You've made it to the final piece of the puzzle. In order to have a high level of emotional intelligence, it's vital to establish powerful relationship management. You can see how lessons 1, 2, and 3, they're building on each other, going back and forth between what I see and what I do, and what others see and what others do. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. We're going to revisit conflict and see how you might handle it differently, knowing what you know now. Relationship management, it's a combination of all the things we've learned. And it allows us to sustain and deepen relationships at work and in life. You notice I don't talk exclusively about the practice environment when we talk about emotional intelligence. And most of the training that I do, I don't tend to talk about the practice exclusively because when we're talking about high performance, it's not only what's happening in the practice, it's what's happening in life. And when we boost one area, we boost the other simultaneously, sometimes without even recognizing it. It's not until you get down the road that you go, wow, the benefits are not just for this one specific area. They're going out everywhere. And so having a high level of relationship management allows us to manage the emotions around us and connect deeper and to improve how people respond to us. Wouldn't it be amazing if the majority of interactions that we have with other people ended with healthy, positive, energetic, exciting, fun conclusions? Instead of being angry and frustrated and annoyed and always pessimistic about the situation because it seems to never change. The truth is all relationships take work, and even the great ones that seem effortless, behind the scenes there's a lot more going on than we know, but oftentimes those people tend to have a high level of emotional intelligence. They're using their self-awareness to notice their feelings and judgments and deciding whether or not their needs are being satisfied. They're using their self-management skills to express their feelings and act according to the benefit of that connection. And then they're using their social awareness skills to better understand one another's feelings. I'm convinced that in our generation, at this very moment, one of the greatest things we're lacking is the ability to help another person feel understood. And so no wonder people pop off so easily and get stressed and get frustrated with other people because we're not giving people the time of day to express what's going on inside in a way that's meaningful. And so they're carrying around these frustrations, the shame, this guilt. They're just carrying around a weight on their shoulders, and not many people give them room to express what's really going on. You see, in high relationship management, people are able to have the tough conversations, maintaining good, solid relationships with all the parties involved despite what's going on. They're able to find out about other person's interest and inquire about it when meeting, even if it appears that it doesn't have any connection to what's going on. They're just simply building relationships. And they have a firm grasp and handle on their own emotions. And it almost seems to feel what you feel when they're talking to you. You ever been in a conversation with someone and you just felt like they understood what you were saying? Oftentimes it's just because they're using their social cues to pick up on what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and acknowledging that. So what I hear you saying is this. And they just repeat back what you say. Yeah, okay. And then they acknowledge the experience that they hear you and see. Sometimes people don't always say what they're feeling, but you can tell by their response. And so it's, man, that must be really frustrating. I know that's sad for you. I know it's difficult for you. You don't have to agree with what their experience is, but you can acknowledge what's happening. Instead of being a low relationship manager and basically finding fault in everybody. Being tired and demotivating You don't really recognize other people's achievements. You can be tough and difficult and unapproachable, and you can expect results, but you don't really give people the time of day. So let's think about your story of conflict. Think back to a time where you had a memorable conflict. If you want to do this in a work environment and you're doing this with your team in this very moment, you can think back to a conflict with a team member. If that's uncomfortable in this very moment, you can think back to just a memorable conflict you've had in life. It could be with a spouse, someone in a relationship with. It could be a child. It could be a parent. It could be anyone. It could be a friend. And I want you to briefly think about the parties that were involved and the situation leading up to the conflict. So who is the conflict with? And now that you have decided on which conflict you're going to focus on and think about for this moment, I want you to think about your perspective on the conflict. What narrative, what story are you telling about that conflict today? So you and another team member had an experience, and this is the story you tell of that moment. Now, this is where it gets challenging. That's your perspective. Let's think about the other person's perspective on the conflict for just a minute. What story might they tell about their experience with you? Are they going to tell the same story? Or are they going to say the exact same thing you said, but just in reverse? You see, we need to think about other people's experiences. So what do you think that person's conflict experience was like? And now, think about the reason that answering that wasn't easy. Why wasn't it easy to answer that question? Maybe you already have a bias towards that person. Maybe you have a bad attitude about them before you even get into that environment. You didn't even give them a chance. Maybe there's another reason. Now think about this. What was the way you handled it? And then not just how you handled it, but what was the result? Was there a resolution? Was it swept under the rug? Do you still have a bad attitude? Or maybe there was a resolution, it was positive, and it moved you forward. And the final thing is, what did you learn from the experience? Maybe you need to learn to appreciate the person more and their work. Maybe you can show more respect to them and more value to who they are, their contribution to the workplace. Maybe you can practice gratefulness before you enter the work environment and feel grateful for each team member individually. And maybe you need to communicate before and after on performance. Challenge each other to be better. Maybe you can understand yourself as well. Maybe you weren't always prepared. This is about taking ownership of the relationship, being courteous and conscious and aware of what role you play, because emotions fuel conflict. And again, when we think about a diagram, we think there's conflict, which leads to an emotion. And then for so many of us, we ignore unmet needs, and those emotions fuel more conflict. We keep spinning out of control. We're hungry for something. We're angry. We're lonely. We're tired. The needs aren't met. Their needs aren't met. The situation's needs aren't met. In relationship management, it's so powerful when we recognize conflict and the emotions that start to arise. And we begin to spot the unmet need. And then we begin to explore the emotion. And then what's so powerful is we begin to use emotional intelligence strategies, EQ strategies, to become an EQ performer, a top performer. And I love the conversation when people say, oh, but life is fixed. And I laugh because I know the power and the growth that's available when we have a growth mindset and the ability to challenge ourselves, to practice an emotional fitness routine, spotting the unmet needs, exploring the emotions, and using strategies to restore and improve relationships. We can rethink the conflict story. Think about what were your unmet needs in that very moment when you had conflict. And then you can think about what were the unmet needs of the person you were in conflict with. Maybe you don't fully know, but you can take a guess. And then we can take an understanding of the needs of the situation. So you have your needs, they have their needs, but the situation has a need as well. Think about that for a minute. And then we can explore the emotions. What were you feeling? We can explore the emotions of what they were feeling. And then we can begin to choose emotional intelligence strategies to move us forward. Do we need more self-awareness? Do we need greater self-management? Do we need to practice more social awareness, paying attention to cues in the world? Do we need to have greater relationship management? Rethinking the conflict is possible. To think about the actions that you could have taken and what you will take the next time. We can talk about strategies, sharing information about yourself, as well as asking questions about others shows your interest. Being interested over interesting. You can use your natural communication style and downplay or eliminate two downsides. You can pay close attention to matching your tone and body language with what you're really trying to say. Are you being over the top? Are you being too dramatic? Are you being not dramatic enough? We can pay attention to the cues that we're giving and sending out. We can make a habit to use phrases like thank you and please and I'm sorry, acknowledging other people more, appreciating other people more, acknowledging their emotions without making it a big deal. So often we tell people, well, don't think this way. It's too emotional, or that's too expressive, or you shouldn't do that. And we totally kill the environment and the ability to have trust in relationships. We can work on deepening strategies to get feedback, really listening to what's being said, asking clarifying questions. It's hard to be confused when you ask for clarification. If you walk away from a meeting and you're confused, did you stop and say, hey, I just want a little more clarification. Can you explain that one more time to me? Or maybe you understood part, but you needed a little more understanding of another part. So not being afraid to dive in and ask more. Communicate with an open door policy rather than people being afraid to connect and being afraid to meet with you. You'll show your anger appropriately and only when it actually improves a relationship. And now, isn't that interesting that anger can actually improve a relationship? I grew up interpreting anger as something I didn't like, and so I would say, I don't get angry. But in reality, we all get angry in some form or another. Maybe the terminology is different, but we all get frustrated. We all get tired of something or someone, and that's a form of anger. And it wasn't until I learned to say, okay, I'm angry, that it gave room to have discussions around what anger looked like. And so we actually use it to move relationships forward in the appropriate setting. We can notice the moods of others and choose a response to show that we recognize that other person, that what they're thinking and feeling is important. We can show that we care by doing meaningful things for someone else that sums up how we feel. We can meet with people who will be impacted by the upcoming decisions before and after the decisions are made to explain why and how each decision is made. It's easy to get excited about something new, whether you're the practice owner, an associate who's bringing something new into the practice, or even management. And you have this new idea and you come in excited, but you haven't pitched it to anyone. But you expect everyone to follow your plan. And so it's planning on creating conversations about change with the appropriate people before it happens. Getting buy-in from other people so the shock isn't necessarily always so big. You can use your EQ skills to manage your own feelings about giving feedback and decide how best to approach each person so that your message is direct and constructive. We can easily, in the moment, give feedback that wasn't warranted or was too aggressive or not powerful and it didn't move the situation forward. It actually caused harm in the environment. And so having our EQ skills polished and ready so that we recognize this is the right time to give feedback. Or maybe I need to take a time out. I need to count to 10 before I give feedback because I'm going to say something I don't mean to say. I want to say it in the moment, but I know it's not powerful. It's not going to help our team be better. We can observe situations and the people in the situations before we speak or act and make an appropriate or sensitive response because it's all about matching our intention. What do we believe about people around us? What do we believe about the situations I'm in and involved with? We can't avoid every situation. We can't avoid life unless we want to live in a box by ourselves, alone, and we know how that turns out, not very well. So we're not going to avoid the difficult relationships, and instead we're going to use our EQ skills to anticipate our own emotions, to seek agreement and move ourselves forward, managing ourselves and acknowledging progress together as a team. Whether it's husband and wife, whether it's team member and team member in the practice, whether it's dental assistant and doctor, chair side, how they interact. I'll let go of blame and focus on the repair so we can offer fix-it statements that are neutral in tone, finding common ground. Sometimes, we think it's hard to bridge the gap, but it's not as hard as we think. Sometimes it can be simply saying something like, this is hard. And you acknowledge that this is a challenging environment before you continue into the conversation, setting the tone for what's about to take place. And we can start conversations with common ground, asking people to share their point of view, listening deeper and more intently instead of planning what you're going to say, setting somebody up. We know how that turns out, right? So we want to help people understand our side, moving the conversation forward and keeping in touch. So I want you to think about, in relationship management, what are key relationships for you going forward? It could be a team member. It could be with a doctor. It could be with a spouse. It could be with a kid. It could be with a friend. Think about 3 different relationships. I want you to think about, who can you build one relationship with? And when you decide who that person is, what would you like to achieve in that relationship over the next year? And then I want you to think about one relationship you can go deeper in. So you want to deepen this relationship. It's a current relationship, but you want to go deeper. What would you like to achieve in this relationship over the next year? And then finally, I want you to think about one relationship that you want to fix. What would you like to achieve in that relationship over the next year? You see, you have the ability to set the tone. I did an internship in my 20s with Dr. Tim Elmore, who was the creator and writer of Habitudes. And they were timely leadership principles that were short and digestible, connected to an image. It was visually rich, and it was a short lesson on leadership. And one of them that always stood out was, do you want to be the thermostat or the thermometer? And we all have the ability to be one or the other. And sometimes we go back and forth, but being a thermometer, we're reactive to what's happening around us. If it's hot and we get excited and we're, doing things we don't need to be doing, we're pushing the anger scale. Or maybe it's cold and we're disconnected and we're sad and we're just not involved with people in a meaningful way. And so we aren't feeling like we're part of the group. Well, we can easily fall into that trap when we play the thermometer. But when we live as the thermostat, we have the ability to control the temperature. We can set the tone and the pace and the environment. If it's getting too hot, we can bring the temperature down. If it's getting too cold, we can bring the temperature back up. Using the tools that we have in front of us as emotionally intelligent high performers, as EQ performers, we can be the thermostat. The question is, will you make the decision to be a leader, to stand above the crowd, oftentimes choosing the difficult road, knowing that the outcome is going to be better, even if the short term is a little more challenging? I know you have it within you to be an emotionally intelligent high performer. And I know that when you connect yourself to the power of building relationships that are winning relationships that work for you, not against you, and with you and for you, and your life improves incrementally over time because at home you're more connected to your spouse, to your relationship partner, to your kids, to all the people around you, to your friends, your coworkers, the people you see every day and spend so much time with, to the patients that you serve. Again, I don't talk about all the different facets of how this applies, but think of how your patients will feel when in those moments that you're with them, you're super connected. That you're sitting there and they know that you have their full attention. That you're really paying attention, that you're listening. I've heard so many stories of practices who they'll visit different places and they'll say, I felt something different, and it was the team. They cared at a deeper level. They weren't just going through the motions. And it was really powerful to see. And so I challenge you to take these principles into your practice, put them to work with your coworkers, your teammates. Use them to see how you can strengthen your bonds with your patients, creating raving patients who love coming in to see you, breaking the fear cycle, engaging in a new way. Emotional intelligence is powerful stuff. I thank you for choosing EQ Performer to gain awareness, to discover emotional intelligence, and to begin the conversation around building winning relationships.